Welcome into another edition of AWA Unleashed, the preeminent and number one podcast dedicated to the American Wrestling Association. Surprise, we're in the same clothes as last week. Yeah, hey. Believe it or not, I'm going to let you out on a little secret. Mick Karch, just as we said, we just cut in half, and here we go, right? I mean, I think they enjoy I don't want to say the nonchalant, but just like people sometimes try and be something they're not. It's like, I have to be this super professional. I have to be this, exceptional present. It's like, you're getting us. You're getting us. And this is just what we do, right? And it's the goofiness. I know maybe some people don't like it. It's just kind of how we roll. It's how we operate. And the reason we cut this in half, we did the last week with the reunion. This week it's going to be SNR. I didn't want to shortchange people that were going to talk about the reunion. I felt like it was important to let people really get the essence of what happened with the reunion. And I also didn't want to shortchange SNR. I really thought that maybe we could have gotten them done in a 2-for-1. But as we got going, I didn't want to kind of rush through it. So that's why it's as professional as it is. But we're having fun, and ultimately it's trying to give the fans what they want.
Well, two things. First of all, you made a point of talking about, it's just us. Now don't have to be professional. Believe me, people have long since gotten used to our non-professionalism.
Yes.
And so.
Well, I mean, you and I have both been around people where it's like, you have to present this certain facade. It's like, I have to give you the presentation that everything is hunky-dory and it always goes perfect and there's never any warts, and it's, everything has got to be just so. And for me, part of this is just the authenticity. Like, I want this to be as authentic and genuine as it can be, because when we were at the reunion, like, it's just, you're talking, like, you're not Mick Karch the announcer, you're Mick Karch the person who happens to be an announcer. Like, what you see is what you get. And when you see us make these decisions on the fly, like, it's not like, okay, well, we're going to pretend to do this. It's literally, what can we do to make it the best product that we can? And this is it.
I would just request something before we talk about SNR. At the end of the show, last time, you said something. You said, we're going to cut the stream. And unfortunately, I went and placed a call to my urologist immediately afterward, because I thought something's wrong here. If the stream is being cut, we're Anyway, moving right along, I'll wait for the applause to die down and the drum rolls and the rim shots and everything else.
Okay.
All right. Move ahead.
Yeah, let's move ahead. By the way, you guys, we're getting a little bit closer to Christmas, so naturally you see sodastickco.com. You can get your AWA hoodies, your personalized hoodies. You can get it black and white with your name on the inside. It is so cool. I love it. And by the way, I have it here again. It is the black and white. Shout out to Landon, who was at the reunion. These things are now available on sodastickco.com, because, some people, I don't like the white. I totally understand that. Black and white, sodastickco.com. Use the promo code Unleashed for 15% off. Also, 7th Avenue Pizza, want to thank them as well for making this possible. You guys, if you can't find it, let me know, because I know I've had people in the Eastern Metro that are like, hey, I can't find it. Where's it at? Let me know if you find it, in the, Oakdale, and I guess, maybe if, not outside the Metro, you can go to 7thavenuepizza.com. You can order it and they'll ship it to you. If you're in the Metro and you're looking for it, you can't find it. Let us know in the comments, or if you have found it, let us know, because like in the Stillwater, Oakdale, Matamita area, we got some folks that are looking for it over there. Okay, Mick, SNR. I know this is one of the things that people remember you most for is Saturday night at Ringside. So kind of take me through the genesis of this and like the whole concept of SNR. When were you presented, or when did you first start hearing about this idea for this Saturday night wrestling show?
Times are approximate because, first of all, it was a long time ago. Secondly, you know, um,
Well, make
I
it
had,
up. Make it
I had,
up.
I had just left I was about to leave the AWA. So this would have been probably January, February of 1988. And Paul Heyman, of all people, who had been working for the AWA at the same time that I was there, knew I was leaving. And actually, Paul was not going to be long for the AWA either. And he was very close friends with Joe Pedicino and Bonnie Blackstone down in Atlanta. And they had a wrestling block. I don't know how many hours, how many shows they had back to back. But Paul called me and he said, "Hey, I got a maybe opportunity here for you. Joe and Bonnie are involved in this, and Channel 23 up here in the Twin Cities is thinking about doing the same thing. And they're thinking about it. Started out as a Saturday morning block idea." And Paul said, "You know what? They're looking for somebody to do wraparounds." And, for those who are in the business, you kind of get that. But it's like one show starts, you intro it, close it out, intro the second show, boom, boom, boom. And they said, Paul said, "Why don't you call Joe and he'll set up an interview for you?" So I called Joe Pedicino. He kind of explained what they were going to be doing. And they were going to be doing the wrestling block up in the state of Minnesota. Well, he set up an interview with Mary O'Neill, her name was, at KTMA TV, to go down and audition to be the host of the show. So I did, and again, this is probably, God, I don't know, February of 1988, I'm guessing.
Okay.
And I go down there, they got the studio set up, and they, really primitive. We'll show a picture of that in a second, but it was basically the audition, and old cardboard cutout here, is standing there, in his suit and looking all prim and proper, and basically they just said, "Wing it, you know wrestling, wing it, close out one show, introduce the other show." So I did that.
So were you told like what show to introduce? So, okay. So you weren't just like picking some random show with okay. So they kind of told you, this is what we have. We're coming out of, this is what we're going into. You make that transition.
Yeah. Their two flagship shows were World Class and NWA Worldwide at the time.
Okay.
And, it kind of expanded after that, but that was basically it, introduce World Class, close it out, introduce NWA Worldwide, close it out, and say goodnight to everybody. So it was going to be a total of, a minute or 2 minutes of airtime. Go down there. I did it. And probably 3-4 weeks later, I got the call, and they said, "Well, we had a few people that, auditioned for the part, but we like what you do. And would you like to be the host of SNR?" Absolutely. And that was kind of how it started. So I have Paul E. and the late Joe Pedicino and Bonnie Blackstone to thank for it.
So you get this call, and so how long did you have to audition for before the show actually became a reality? Was there like was it the next week, or was it like a couple of weeks or a month, or how long between the time that you auditioned and that it became a reality?
I think a couple of weeks later. They wanted to get this show on the road, and now it had transitioned from a Saturday morning wrestling block. Now they're talking about doing Saturday night, and they said, we're going to call it Saturday Night at Ringside. Well, my first thought was, Well, that could be boxing, could be wrestling, could be, anything. I didn't really like the title, Saturday Night at Rings. I would have gone with more of a wrestling theme, but they were in charge. And, it
Did
was
you have
obvious.
did you have any creative input at that point, or were you a talent and an announcer only?
At that point, I was seen and not heard, and heard and not seen. Getting my feet wet. And so I didn't really say anything from a creative standpoint. After we
Okay.
had been on the air for not that long, I approached the producer and I said, "How about these ideas? Why don't we let's bring in a fan of the week? We'll call it Ringside of the Week. Hey, good idea. So we'll give him a 5-minute segment." Well, then it was, can I do a wrestling news, a weekly wrestling update? 5 minutes. Oh, yeah, take your 5 minutes. Well, it got to be the Ringsider of the Week, the weekly wrestling news and update, trivia. We would have the guys in studio from the local wrestling scene doing angles and what have you. And then I would also finish it up with what we called the video vault, which was an old video clip taking a look at the old AWA or whatever it was. So what started out as just doing the wraparounds became a total of 30 minutes for me during the wrestling block that they spaced it out. And as far as creative control, they never batted an eye. I mean, the only time they questioned anything with me, one time I said, "How about a little blood in the studio?" No, they did not want to do that.
What was what was capacity in the studio, like in terms of like fan on?
You know what? We only did like 2 live events in the studio. I mean, it was your typical studio,
typical TV studio.
Yeah, the SNR backdrop, just what you would find, all the equipment around you and everything else. And they had built up this little SNR prop stage and what have you. But it took off so fast, Chris. That was the thing about it. And the amazing thing is, not only because they gave me this creative leverage and leeway, no other wrestling show in the country was doing that, and not even Pedicino's wrestling block, because we were involving the fans now. You could write a letter and I would answer it on the air. You could come in and you could say hi to all your friends at the high school that you go to.
Yeah.
So it was the first fan involved,
fan friendly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important, Mick, because you talk about how you want to differentiate yourself and how you want to be different from everybody else. You have to find something that is so unique to you. And SNR sounds like you took this base idea and you wanted to make it just special to something that you had that nobody else was doing. And you kind of had a feeling that it would work. Was there any, and before we get to the pictures here, I want to ask you one more question. Was there any there was no hesitation from them when you're like, "Hey, I want to expand into Ringside, or I want to do this." Like they were all about allowing you to expand into little segments or bits.
You have to remember, Channel 23 at the time, it was a local independent station. And, they would show me the ratings, the quarter hour, and so on and so forth. And what was happening was that my localized segments were getting the big ratings. Yeah. That's when people, because you had your TV shows. I mean, you had World Class, you had Global, you had NWA Worldwide, Pro Wrestling This Week, POW. I mean, we just endless, Windy City, and so on and so forth. So wrestling fans could get the syndicated TV shows. But all of a sudden, it really steamrolled with the local segments. Hey, I want to be on SNR. They would send in a letter. Here's my favorite wrestler. How can I be on the air?
Did they take this to advertisers too? Because I mean, I'd have to imagine that advertisers would be frothing at the mouth if they find out that all of a sudden this little wrestling thing is all of a sudden starting to pick up a lot of steam.
They did take it to advertisers, and we did really well. And I think the proof is in the pudding. And obviously we'll get to the end run eventually. But we're on the air for 4 years at a local independent station on a Saturday night. Which is crowded night for television. You got a lot of options, and back then HBO was starting to blossom, and everything else. So we had a lot of competition. But you're on the air for 4 years, 200 shows. You're doing something right.
Yeah.
And yes, so there you go.
And you're so unique. So your first night, kind of you walk in. What are you feeling going into your very first show at SNR? And I mean, do you remember a lot of the details, kind of how you were feeling, and kind of take me through that very, very first night?
I don't remember a thing. I mean, seriously.
Good talk. Moving on.
It was such primitive setup at the time, and we were at a studio in Northeast Minneapolis. Prior to, about a year later, we moved out to St. Paul, across from the fairgrounds, Minnesota State Fairgrounds. But early SNR, again, all I'm doing is these wraparounds. And oh, look at that. Who's that guy with the dark hair? Good God. 34
God, so
years
old, it's black and white. It's black and white. I don't remember black and white.
There was any camera there. But there you see the camera, and that was it. I mean, that's the SNR backdrop back then, and it was just opening and closing the shows. And so what did I feel the first? Obviously I was nervous, but that was it. It was the one night of being on edge.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I'm not to put myself over it. It's what I did. It's what I do. I had done that kind of thing 1,000 times in my head over the years, and it's like a guy who, becomes a professional wrestler. Yeah, he wants to tweak it and get the training, but he's had those matches in his head for so many years. So I was ready.
How much work went into every show? Did you have any help writing any of these segments, or it was all you? Like, you were in charge of everything in terms of prepping, and I assume you probably had a floor director that was timing you out and making sure that you hit your marks.
Yeah, and basically, as far as the syndicated shows, Chris, they would bicycle the videotapes to me on a Wednesday for me to preview. They would send them out to my house, whether it was World Class or NWA Worldwide. If something happened on the show on Worldwide to address, that's great. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I kind of skimmed through the shows. And then went in and did the wraparounds. There you see, that's when we moved to the newer studio in St. Paul, and that's the late great Buddy Wolf. And Buddy was one of my favorite guests. I'd known Buddy from his days in the AWA, just a terrific guy. But to your point about writing the stuff, 100% me. And sometimes it was great. Other times I would watch it on a Saturday night. We taped it on a Thursday. Mm-hmm. Typically took about 45 minutes to tape. And then I'd watch it on Saturday night. Sometimes I would just be, God, yeah, we nailed it. And then other times I'd think, what in the hell were you thinking? Well, that certainly went out like a fart in church, but so I was responsible, hit or miss.
So when you're getting these tapes on Wednesday and they're not supposed to air till Saturday, I mean, were you told that, hey, we're going to give you exclusive rights? So did you watch every show? Did you just watch parts of it? I mean, how much of these tapes did you watch ahead of time to make sure that you could make sure that you had everything ready to go?
I skimmed through them, or if I knew that there was going to be an angle to talk about, and that's what I would do. I kind of watch the tapes and get to the point where they had their blow-off match or their angle or whatever. So at the beginning of SNR, after I introduced, the show, I would say, tonight on NWA Worldwide, you're going to get a look at a very hot Barry Windham. I would kind of pick out whatever the main talking point was going to be for the show. But otherwise, as far as the squash matches or what have you, if it was insignificant, I just skimmed through it.
Did any of the promotions that you worked with, and I want to ask you about what promotions you did they ever get wind of what you were doing and say, hey, we want you to talk more about, our Flair Wyndham thing, or, we want you to talk about, more of the Freebirds and Eddie Gilbert here? Did they kind of tell you what direction to go once they found out that you were working with them and you were talking about their product?
Not really. They kind of left it up to me. Channel 23 was broadcast television, and the stations, I believe, had a barter system.
Okay. And kind of explain a barter for those that maybe
barter system is basically, the Channel 23 will air the show and then sell like 12, 15 minutes of advertising. And that's how they made their money, the TV station. And then, of course, this is almost an infomercial for NWA Worldwide or, that type of thing. So had a terrific working relationship with them, more so with NWA, because World Class was not running any shows here, obviously. USWA wasn't, but NWA would come in periodically.
Right, World Class based out of Dallas and USWA out of Memphis.
Yes, yep. And so the NWA, when they would run shows, at the Roy Wilkins Auditorium or whatever, the Met Center, they were very cordial. And they would let me in the back to do the interviews and so on and so forth. But as far as direction, no, they knew that there were shows airing. They knew it was part of a wrestling block. There was only one promotion that, for some reason or other, did not want to work with Saturday Night at Ringside, and I'll leave it to you to figure out who that was.
Nothing comes to mind. So what was it? NWA, like, who else worked with you in terms of allowing you to be able to use their footage?
NWA, as you said, World Class, Windy City Wrestling out of Chicago.
Okay.
With my buddy Sammy DeCiro. I believe we had some Eddie Sharkey PWA action at the time. Pro Wrestling This Week with Joe Pedicino, because Joe, again, was the impetus behind the whole thing. We had the Powerful Women of Wrestling promotion, POW, as part of the lineup. I don't know, who else I'm forgetting, but we had cooperation with just about everybody. And now, we're taking a look at some of the memories of SNR. Honest to God, I get teary-eyed at some of this stuff, because not only are a lot of the guys gone, but a long time ago. That was the Saturday Night at Ringside second anniversary special. So that would have been in 1990, March or April of 1990. And Mad Dog Vachon came in from his home in Omaha, Nebraska. To be on the show. I contacted the dog and I said, hey, if the station pays your trans or whatever, can you come up and do this? He said, no, my friend, you don't have to worry about anything. I'll pay my own way. I'll get a ride up there. And that was the first time that I had met the dog. And I talk about a wonderful, wonderful individual. He was just extraordinary. That's one of the all-time highlights, was interviewing the dog.
So it's Saturday Night at Ringside, and I know we're kind of jumping around here. Was it always live? Was there ever a time where you felt like maybe it was going to be recorded, or would it only work if you were able to do it in studio the day of?
As I said, we taped it on Thursday.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. We taped it on Thursday, and I gotta say, 90% of the time, Chris, it was one take.
Okay.
We didn't have a lot of redos, which is great. I managed to hit my mark, more times than not, which is a good thing. But the producers were so great. Tom Freeman, my floor director. I would go in there, and these poor guys would have to, like you do, kind of have to slap the graphics together at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon, and here we're taping at 5:15, 5:30. And, I would have the rundown and the format I would give them ahead of time. But if all of a sudden there was a no-show, or I wanted to have them get in a video clip at the last minute, never batted an eye. They were the greatest team to work with. So yeah, through the magic of television, it's like it's interesting because I saw Jesse Ventura one time on a Saturday night at a fundraiser when he was running for governor, and Jesse says, "What are you doing here? How come aren't you supposed to be doing your TV show?" So everybody thought it was live, but we had taped it on the Thursday.
Okay. See, and I guess it came up, and I guess that's when you're doing something right. That people, because in media, like, if you're not there and it's already in the can, as they say, and it's there ready to go, and you can't tell, that is a hard thing to do, because a lot of people can pick up on if something's recorded or not. And I got to be honest, like, to me, it felt live. So I guess that's on me. That's where I felt like it was live. And if you had said it that it was recorded, I mean, I must have obviously missed it. So regarding some of your more memorable moments, you said, having Mad Dog in studio, was it a hard pitch to get some of these guys to come in for this and be guests? Or, we'll get to angles and stories here in a minute, but in terms of just having people in the studio, was it hard to convince them to come in and be a part of this new idea?
No, it really wasn't for the most part. What had happened, Chris, is that so much of SNR evolved into putting over Eddie Sharkey's promotion.
The PWA, yep.
Yep, Pro Wrestling America. And, there were other independents that we put over as well. But Eddie really understood the value of television, and he was the only promotion that was running consistently every month. So it kind of got to be a hand in glove operation with SNR and PWA. So Eddie was always, get the phone call. Who are we going to get on this week? I want to send the Hater down. I want to send Ridley Norris down. Tommy Ferrara, we got Adnan on this week, but then he's going to be out of town. And, what can we do? And to Eddie's credit, and God love him, I would say, hey, you know what? What's the main event? Let's do this. As far as an angle or a storyline, and Eddie was all over it, because
he was okay with an angle or something, advancing a story happening inside of the television studio.
Oh, absolutely.
How did the TV execs feel about that? Like, I mean, were they concerned that something might happen where some of the equipment would be damaged, or are they letting you
everything was pretty self-contained?
Okay.
And, only a couple of times did we even stray off of, keeping the camera focused. And, I know one time the late T. Joe Khan delivered a DDT to a local wrestler, Tommy Ferrara, in front of our set. There was the infamous, Adnan LKC hitting the watermelon and having his precious heirloom sword breaking. T. Joe Khan again, took the SNR logo, this big 6-foot wood logo, off its moorings, and walked off with it. For the most part, everything was really self-contained, though, so the station really didn't worry about it. It's funny, Chris, that they just didn't know. I don't think that it was that they weren't paying attention. Yeah. I think if we would have done something that would have been outrageous and really not good, they would have been a little nervous.
No news is good news in that sense.
Yeah, and I can tell you the only time that SNR got any mail that was really like, we did an angle with Tommy Ferrara, who was a legitimate Vietnam vet, and the Golden Idol, and the Idol's henchman. And Idol came on and basically was berating Tommy Ferrara for his service in Vietnam. Tommy was actually wounded in Vietnam, and Idol, as part of the storyline, made light of it. And, you guys lost the war and blah, 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 blah. And we got some mail, and some of it was not very nice. and a lot of it was directed at the Golden Idol. So we kind of quickly, kind of soft soaped from that point on what we talked about. So it was, yeah, but for the most part, everything was self-contained and really safe, and we just did what we could do.
Okay. Kind of take me through some of your favorite guests and some of your most memorable moments that you had in terms of just people being a part of the show that you brought in.
Well, and probably the pictures would help, somewhat along those lines. But as far as the most memorable guests, it's an endless list. The most memorable night had to be the second anniversary special, and that was the one we alluded to a couple of minutes ago with Mad Dog. Mad Dog came in. Baron von Raschke was there. Stan Crusher Kowalski, Larry Hennig, Al DeRusha. We had brought in Butch Levy, the late Butch Levy, who was a former Golden Gopher football player, along with Vern Gagne, and became a wrestling champion in his own right. Wally Carbo, of course. And what was great about this night, Chris, is again, I'd done this for 30 years at that point. There's Larry Hennig and Wally Carbo, and honest to God, I love that picture. You talk about the essence of the AWA, and for all their back and forth over the years, with Larry ranting and raving about Carbo, they loved each other. And so to be able to bring those guys in, and what was great, people didn't see it, but after the show was over, we went out to eat. A little Italian restaurant not that far from the studio. And I'm a kid in the candy store because I'm sitting with these guys, my heroes from my youth. And people in the restaurant immediately are gravitating to these guys. A lot of them hadn't been on television in years. There's Wally and Mad Dog Vachon. And again, it's just, I honestly get choked up because that is, again, the essence of the AWA. All those years that Mad Dog went out, spitting and huffing and puffing, and Carbo, you can't force me to wrestle Vern Gagne, and, you're going to get in the ring, whether you like it or not, and it was, to have them in the studio, and they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Mad Dog was victimized by a hit and run accident in Iowa, and unfortunately had his leg amputated. So it'd been a while since Wally and Maurice had connected, and to see them greet each other in the studio, it was absolutely the most memorable night of them all. I absolutely loved it. And of course, at the very end of that show, Baron von Raschke did a walk-on, or a stomp-on, as it may be, and I was interviewing the dog. And there's a great shot. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But the Baron came out, and as we're wrapping up the show, the Baron says how great it is to see you, Mad Dog, and as soon as this show is over, we're going to enter a 3-legged race. Now, only the Baron could get away with saying something like that. And again, it was the camaraderie, and you knew they loved each other. And I love this picture because I believe this is about 1991, 92-ish. And that is the Baron and the dog, of course. Mm-hmm. And that's my son, Brett. And I believe he was about 4 years old at the time, maybe a little older, 6, 7 years old. And that was at a live event at St. Anthony Shopping Center. And just to see the dog and the Baron back kind of out of character back then, I know I show this to my kid all the time, and he's just like blown away by it. But
well, I mean, was it taboo at that point, or had they just gotten to the point where, they knew that they could let their guard down at this point? Because we were still kind of in that kayfabe era. I mean, that's what they grew up with. That's what they did.
Yeah, you got to remember that at that time, with the dog having retired, mm-hmm. They weren't teaming up anymore. Yeah. And this, it was always so casual with me when I would do an interview, even with the dog or the Baron. I kind of hammed it up, and they loved that stuff. They loved not having to, if they weren't pushing an angle and they could just come out and be themselves and have fun and joke. It was like a respite to them. And that's what I wanted to present. I always walked a fine line. We've talked about this before on SNR between, all right, this is a different era in wrestling. People know what's going on now. I'm not going to insult anybody's intelligence, but I'm not going to give away the store. Yeah. So you always walking that tightrope.
And you mentioned, your son, and that picture. I want to ask before we get to a couple more pictures. When did your kids realize that their dad was somebody did you get recognized out in public a lot? I mean, did people stop and be like, "Oh, you're Mick Karch from SNR"? I mean,
all the time?
Okay. I mean, how did your kids feel about that when they found out that their dad was somebody that a lot of people knew?
They still don't know. Oh, no, I actually know. Yeah. My son was a little bit older and he got a kick out of it. My daughter was a little bit younger then back, she was probably 4 years old. But yeah, I mean, we would get stopped, at the local Burger King or walking down the street or, Walgreens or whatever, and people would say, "Hey, love your show. Can you get an autograph?" And they were pleased. I mean, they were amused by it. And as time went on, they got it and they understood the impact that the old man was making. So they were pleased.
Okay, I'm just always curious when you're out there and you're kind of somebody that is in the public eye, and you're doing things with your family, but yet you're doing your thing, but yet people are out there and they recognize you, and they want to approach you, but yet they don't want to infringe on your personal time and what you're doing with your family. So,
well, and with me, Chris, I always I wanted to be approachable. And again, I'm not putting myself over. I know how I felt as a fan if a wrestler would give you the old snub job. You feel terrible. Somebody wants to take the time and come up to me and say, "I love your show."
I think that's important. Yeah.
Crusher, I'm going to answer them. I can put my Whopper down for a half a minute and, put the tomato juice, off my, answer a question. It's the least I could do.
Yeah. So along with SNR, you're out there and, you're on TV, but how much were you still involved with being out with other promotions and, being out and about with people and ring announcing and, kind of attending these live events along with being Saturday night at Ringside host?
I know I'm going to forget somebody, and so I can't do the alphabet soup of the promotional initials back in the day, but I worked with Jim Mitchell, the Iron Duke, had a promotion back in the day. And of course, we've mentioned Eddie Sharkey. And my friends Sterling and Jerry, Sterling Nolan and Jerry Anderson, late Jerry Anderson, had French Lake Wrestling Association. I worked with a lot of them. That is a shot, and I'm going to guess that's probably 1989, 90-ish. And that's my old friend, Ray Webby, the late Ray Webby, who was a journalist, sportscaster. I mean, everybody knew Ray on the local wrestling scene. And we were doing a live event that was called Wrestle for Shelter. And that was a benefit for the homeless. That particular event was at Loring Park. Did a couple of times out there where all the money went to, to benefit the homeless and, help them with their plight. We did a couple of live events, for charity. I know that SNR at one time early on had me go on the Goodwill Easter Seals telethon for them and promote, that charity. That is a live event that we did, and I'm going to guess this is probably summer 1988, and that was at Wyndham Park in Northeast Minneapolis, which was kind of a hop, skip, and a jump from the TV studios. Again, this is a neighborhood function. Wanted people to come out and support their neighborhood and their businesses. So SNR took it on the road there. And I always loved that. I love doing the live event stuff and having the people right there. So good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great one because I see this, Mick, and I see all of the kids around you, right? And I feel like when you're doing something like that, the people that I feel really want to be the most involved are the kids, because there are the ones that not there. They are the ones that I feel can just bring that natural, unfiltered energy, and they let you hear it and they let you feel it. And to me, when I saw that picture, when you sent me that picture, I mean, you've got so many of these great pictures that we've hit, and we still got a few more that we're going to put up here momentarily. But just to be around that energy was, again, to go out and be a part of these events and representing SNR and the station. Was that something that was hard to get through management, or were you just like, hey, I think it'd be a good idea if we went out and we kind of got a little bit more involved in the community?
They loved it. Management absolutely loved it, and so did we. We love the interaction with people. You made a good point, Chris, about the energy. And I've always loved the live events, whether it was SNR or doing, for Steel Domain or whoever, when you turn on the camera and you say to the people, hey, we're going to be taping for television, let's make a lot of noise. Well, when you had those kids there, you didn't have to tell them twice. You're going to be on television. Do. So when you see that man go 3, 2, 1, you start screaming, and they were all over it. This is again at Wyndham Park, and my God, what a memory this is. On the left, that is Wild Bill Irwin, and on the right, that is the Lightning Kid back in the day, Sean Waltman, and they were teaming up that particular afternoon at Wyndham Park, and again the live event. And I look at those pictures, and I don't know how old Sean Waltman was back there. I don't think he was 20 years old back then, and probably 160 pounds dripping wet. When I talk about SNR, and I talk about it so fondly, it's like everything comes back, boom, 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 just like that. And then you think, my God, this was 3.5 decades ago, and it just will never be repeated. There's another shot.
That's a great shot.
Yeah, there's Sean Waltman. Sean, of course, had a running feud with Jerry Lynn back in the day, and we promoted that heavily on SNR. And that's Sean giving his buddy Slick Mick a little hug, a little more than a hug, a little squeeze. He almost took that dead caterpillar mustache of mine and popped it right off my nose. Let alone those glasses that look like I'm, Rocky the Flying Squirrel. But
between that and Sean's hair and the denim wash jeans, I mean, that is the epitome of the early 90s right there. I mean,
look at the fanny pack. Look at Waltman's fanny pack.
Well, I didn't want to mention the fanny pack, but the fanny pack's pretty solid right there.
Absolutely. I mean, Waltman could do that with a fanny pack. With me, I tried wearing a fanny pack, and sadly, my stomach always hung over it. So you
need fanny packs. You need plural.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I had my own built-in fanny packs.
You need the extension.
And by the way, I can't say enough good things about Sean Waltman. Here we are all these years later, and he's one of my biggest supporters, biggest fans, and I love Sean.
All right, so kind of take me through, when did you know like SNR was at its height, and when did you feel, because like all good things must come to an end, when did you feel like SNR was at its peak? And then I want you to kind of take me through kind of how it ran its course and how it ended.
Well, we did that anniversary special, as I said, in 1990.
And that was number 2, right?
That was number 2. And we actually did a third anniversary special too in 1991. I think we were peaking at that point. The ratings were pretty steady. There was no real fluctuation. We were still working with WCW at the time, or the NWA. They were running some shows up here with Ron Simmons and Rick Rude and Steve Austin, and
so was it still just PWA and WCW Were those the two that were willing to work with you?
Yeah, I mean, we were working with the PWA still consistently. WCW, because they were running in town here, they were still working with us. The SNR, the entire block had kind of dwindled because Windy City, their syndication kind of went by the wayside, and a couple of the others, Pro Wrestling This Week and POW.
Mm-hmm.
So we were down to USWA Global and also NWA.
So at your height, how many different promotions were you working with?
Oh boy, it's got to be 4, 5, 6. We had about. I think at one point we were peaking at about a 4.5 to 5 hour block on Saturday nights, which is pretty damn good. So we were peaking, and I thought we were going to be there a long time. Well, late '91, start getting some rumblings that the station is on the sale block. Well, you never know what's going to happen, whether it's radio or TV, and you know it, Chris, being a part of the business, and more so, I guess, in radio, where they can change format, boom, overnight. You're a rock station at midnight, and then at 12:30, you're a country station. But we got word that SNR was kind of being looked at because the new management team that was offering to buy Channel 23, KTMA, was owned by Linda Brooke. And Linda had a reputation in local media. She had been at Carrie 11, kind of a controversial figure. Won't go into the political, leanings or whatever, but let's just say Linda was very conservative. And so when we heard that SNR might be on the block because of this conservative group coming in and taking over the station, got a little nervous. But about a month before they actually made the buyout, I sat with Linda Brooke and a couple of the people that were representing her. And basically they were saying, so explain this wrestling thing to us. Isn't it kind of violent? I said, well, yeah, but. And I explained the but about wrestling violence.
So you kind of had to let her peek behind the curtain.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just in order to really explain the product properly and say that it's not this evil demonic thing that maybe the perception was.
That's exactly right. Okay. And I was selling the show in terms of the community involvement.
Yep.
In our ratings and how many pieces of mail we were getting every week, and we had been on for 4 years. And, so I'm selling it and I'm putting it over, and there again, kind of going back to the violence part of it. And I said, hey, you know what? Let's look at the lineup, the Untouchables and this and this and this show and on that show. And I said, a lot more violent than the stuff that, we're putting on. Well, they seem to be pretty impressed, and okay, well, thank you very much. Don't hear anything for about 3-4 weeks. And it comes time for show number 200, 200th episode, and I got everything scripted out, and I'm going to come to the TV studio. And I hadn't heard anything from Linda Brooke and company. And I got a phone call that afternoon from Tom Freeman, my floor director, and Tom says, I got to clue you into something. This is going to be the last SNR. They're not bringing SNR back. Well, I got hit with the dumb bullet, right in the sternum. And I was speechless for a minute. And then Tom said, listen, you got to be professional about this. Come in, do the show. If you got to tweak it a little bit, do so. But if you say anything negative about the group, we're taping this on Thursday. The show will never see the light of day.
It'll go into the abyss. So, I mean, when you hear that, and you said it kind of, hit you in the sternum, did that thought ever cross your mind to just bury it? If nothing else, it would be cathartic for you and you could let it, even though you knew it wouldn't air. Did that ever cross your mind for you to just unload, just to get it off your chest?
Yeah, Of course it did. I mean, my initial reaction, I was just like furious. It's like, why did you deceive me? Why did you lead me to believe that we were still going to be a part of this lineup? Why are you doing this on the 200th show? This is kind of an epic deal for us. Yeah, I was pretty livid. And when I got to the studio that day, I will remember this. I saw Linda Brooke a couple of times walking in the hallway back. She would not make eye contact. It was not, hey, thank you for your service. Thank you for so much for doing this. Sorry we had to do this. We're going in a different direction. She wouldn't even make eye contact.
Those are the worst. Like the chicken shit managers that don't have the stones to say anything to you. Yeah. And there are a lot of them out there in this business. But okay, so just
Chris, it's in any business, but again, and what was so bullshit about this is they're talking about the SNR and the violence and everything else. This is what they're telling me why we can't have you on the air. And I see that their lineup, now they're going towards a religious programming now. And they changed it to Sunlight Television, SONLIGHT, Sunlight TV for the religious connotation. And their ratings tanked. All these family-oriented TV shows, the ratings were not doing very, very well, so they went back to carrying the shoot-em-ups, the old westerns, the old, FBI shows, whatever. All of a sudden, it was okay to air that violent stuff again.
Did they? I mean, were you still doing good advertising at that time? Because it's all about the money. At the end of the day, it's all about the money. If your show is bringing in advertising revenue, a lot of times they can look the other way. So I can't get my mind wrapped around the fact that if you're bringing in good revenue, they're going to basically eliminate that because they want to switch formats.
I thought we were bringing in good revenue. The ad guys that I talked to at the TV station thought we were bringing in good revenue. And again, mind you, I'm getting the story that this is why we're taking you off the air.
Yeah.
Well, some fan that I know sent in a letter, and believe me, there were I think at the post office box I got 500-600 letters the week that SNR went off the air. People just furious. How can we bring this back? I knew in my heart of hearts it wasn't coming back. They had made this decision, and so then somebody sends a letter to Linda Brooke and said, why did you take SNR off the air? Well, now she's talking dollars and cents. And she sends them this cold response. Not thank you for watching. We hope you continue to watch our. Well, SNR is really the only live production or the only production in-house that we do outside of syndicated TV shows. This is how much it costs us to produce SNR. This is how much revenue we take in. It's not a money-making deal for us. Goodbye. Pretty cold and heartless shit. But again, it's bottom line, bottom dollar. Okay, you're going to be a business person. I cannot imagine that it costs them that much money to run SNR.
No, and anybody can put any dollar amount out. If it was really costing them that much money, you would have been off the air a whole lot earlier than that. If you were a black hole.
Yep. You're absolutely right. And the guy that ran the station KTMA, we don't need to belabor everybody with all the facts and figures. Yeah. But his name was Donald O'Connor, not to be confused with the movie actor and singer Donald O'Connor.
Or the first champion Pat O'Connor.
Yeah, or the
first
there. But I knew they were in financial trouble, the station, when Linda Brooke was kind of approaching them. But as you said, if they're losing money on SNR, if the station is in trouble, they're going to axe the show. They're going to get rid of it a lot sooner than they did.
You're not going to let it be a financial drain for 4 years.
You know what? I can't do anything about it. I've got when I went on the air that particular night, I started the show out by saying, folks, this is it. This is our 200th episode, and unfortunately, there's not going to be an episode 201. And we're going to get through this. And this is a management decision the station has made. And if you want to see SNR or something like it, come back on the air sometime in the future. My post office box is waiting for you. But again, I knew. But I stayed professional. I didn't bury anybody. I wanted to make sure that the show made the airwaves, and it did. And that was it. Bittersweet. Trapdoor opens up. Slick Mick goes through the trapdoor, and SNR's history after 4 years.
Was there ever any concern that no matter what you did, that last show wasn't going to air? Or did you?
No.
Okay, no. So you felt like they were at least going to honor, hey, this is the last one.
Yeah, I think there's no question about the fact that if I would have said anything or looked into the camera, with a skewed vision or made any comment, they wouldn't have aired it. There's no doubt in my mind if I would have made the slightest sarcastic reference. So in that sense, I just said, hey, this is it. You've been great. I love you all. And hopefully we've entertained you for the last 4 years. And we'll see you down the road. And
was there ever any thought to pitch it to another station? Like, do you feel like another station would have jumped on it if you would have brought it to them?
I don't know. I don't think so. SNR was kind of an anomaly. Well, not kind of, it was. The other stations they had WWF programming. And Vince had pretty much an iron fist and a grip around the throat of a lot of the stations where they could not pick up another wrestling show.
Okay.
So we were limited. Thanks to my friend Chris Dady, about a year later, I started doing some stuff on cable access called Slick Mick's Body Slam Review. So in that sense, we're back on the air. We're promoting the local stuff. But yeah, when SNR, when the lights turned out, that was it. And a lot of people have said over the years, hey, do it again. Bring it back. We'd love to see it.
Yeah. Do you feel it would work in today's environment?
No, absolutely not. Because I would answer the fan feedback questions from people. They would write in and say what happened to this guy, or what am I going to tell them that they don't know on the internet 7 seconds after it happens, let alone 7 weeks before it happens. So the day and age, I couldn't surprise anybody. If I did a trivia contest and I said, hey, tell me, what year did such and such, all they got to do is boom, click Google on the internet,
Google
and they got their answer. In its day and time, SNR was tremendous and classic, and not because of me, because of the concept of the show and how popular it was. And it was right place, right time, unique, trend set. I can't even say trend setting because nobody has done anything like it since.
Right.
So I'm freaking proud of SNR.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why it still resonates with people, because it was one of a kind, and nobody else has been able to replicate it. Maybe nobody else has tried, but sometimes it is just the perfect storm of everything coming together. And right place, right time. So people still remember it fondly. Like I know people are still asking you, hey, what about this on SNR? What about this? And hopefully this has kind of encapsulated everything that was about SNR. And hopefully everybody got, if you got any questions or, we missed something you want, we'll do another Q&A here shortly. So, we can always include it in there. But at the end of the day, I know we got a couple minutes left, Mick. How do you want SNR to be remembered?
Chris, kind of like I said, innovative, singular in what it did, honest as honest could be without completely breaking kayfabe. Definitely the fan-friendly fan involvement, letting people interact, hearing their names on television, having come into this ODB. We've mentioned this many times.
Yeah.
8-year-old Jesse Creasa.
Yeah. How did that become a thing? How did Jesse Creasa get involved?
She sent in a letter. Her and her folks, and she's got a brother Travis. They sent in, can we be Ringsiders of the Week on SNR? And all of a sudden, little 8-year-old future ODB is on there, and I don't want to say I started her career because she'll figure I'm, out for some royalties or residuals, and she'll kick the living shit out of me. So,
well, both of them can be true. Both of those things can be true.
Absolutely, but again, in the scheme of things, just remember SNR for what it was. We had fun with it. I've done a lot of shit in this business, but SNR was that to me. That's my puppy. Because they let me take the ball and run with it. And I'm grateful.
Well, I know a lot of fans are grateful because fans still are asking about it. And when you've got something that people are asking about, 30 plus years later, tell me that you were onto something. You were onto something, and, people loved it, and people loved that, that you did it correctly. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up here, Mick. Let's go ahead and give our shout outs, and then we'll take it home.
Shout out to the notorious Brad Brightsman. Now, Brad Brightsman has been a fan for a long, long time. At one time, he was a contributing writer to a local newsletter. He's not doing that anymore, but Brad is not only a supporter of mine and independent wrestling, but he loves this podcast. And he listens to it all the time. Brad, we love you back, my friend. Shout out to you.
And I'm going to give it to my friend John Shannon, even though I shouldn't after what he did to me at the reunion.
What do you do?
He completely punked me. You didn't know?
No.
Oh, John Shannon punked me hard. Okay. So you seriously don't know this?
I do not know this.
Okay. Here's what happened. Like, people are coming in, and I'm trying to say hi to as many people as I can, but I'm kind of running around like chicken with my head cut off. And John comes up. I'm like, "Hey, John, nice to see you." And he kind of looks at me. He's like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "Hey, John, just nice to see." And I'm like trying to be nice, right? I'm like, "Hey, it's so great to see you," because I haven't seen him in a long time. If I haven't seen people in a long time, I'm grateful to see people. And he's like, I'm sorry, I don't know you. I don't. You need to get away from me. I don't know who you are. And he's like looking around like he's helpless. And I'm like, fuck, what did I do? Did I just like insult him? And all of a sudden, I could tell. And then I was like, you Hooker, you
gotcha.
You got me. And he just burst out laughing. And I'm like, I was so embarrassed. And I'm like, I hate you. But it's a brilliant prank. And
it's nice of you to give the shout out to him.
It was great. I can't hate the hustle. I can't knock it. Like, he completely punked me in front of a ton of people. And he embarrassed me. And I got to give him credit because I didn't know. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. But it was also really, really well done.
Well, it's gregarious of you to put him over after he did that to you. And if it makes you feel any better, I had people coming up to me and saying, "Who the hell are you?" And they weren't punking me.
Were they asking who you were or me? Because people
they saying, "Hey, check the marquee," and so. But, to John and Brad and everybody else that was at the reunion and listened to me rambling on this week, we are so grateful. We've got, you said something at the reunion, Chris, about when you graciously gave me the award about friends. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is the friendship in this business. And we love everybody. Honest to God, we love you folks.
This I feel, Mick, we are in a community of AWA fans now. I feel like this podcast, I don't want to say it kind of ignited it or it was a catalyst, but I feel like that community was always there, right? And we needed something to kind of bring everybody together. And I feel like we've got a community of wrestling fans that have gotten to know each other because of this podcast, that have met each other because of the reunion, and hopefully other things that we'll do in the future. That to me is totally awesome that you've got this community of people. And one of the ways that you can join our AWA Unleashed fans page on Facebook, Brian and Brandon and Jeremy do an absolutely fabulous job in putting content up and making sure that if you want to be a part of it, be a part of it. So I think that's also kind of one thing to kind of piggyback off of that. So it's been a great couple of weeks with being able to, talk about the reunion and now SNR. And now I think I'll let you get going. And I don't know, what are we going to do next week?
I don't know. Are we going to be on next week?
Oh, well, nobody's going to cancel us except for me.
Don't tell Linda Brooke.
Oops.